Hello and welcome on this fine evening. If the audience here listens to this lesson before or during their retirement with attentive ears and an open heart in these confusing yet fascinating times, I feel as if you will gain a lot of wisdom. Hope you guys understand. Now let's begin. Most people your age don't hear this enough, so let me begin with something simple and true. You haven't failed in life. You didn't miss your chance, and you're not too late for anything that actually matters. People spend decades running so fast they barely get a moment to breathe. Then one day the world calls it retirement age, and they're expected to suddenly have everything figured out: money, health, time, priorities, purpose, as if life came with instructions. It didn't. You learned everything the hard way, the honest way, and you deserve credit for that. Now, before we get into the financial lessons, I want you to set something down: the weight you've been carrying. That quiet pressure that says, I should have saved more, I should have invested earlier, I should have planned better, I should have known what I was doing. Let it go. You did the best you could with the knowledge, opportunities, and responsibilities you had. And chances are you did far better than you give yourself credit for. People live under the illusion that financial wisdom only matters when you're young. That's nonsense. Financial clarity matters whenever it arrives. A good decision at 65 is worth more than a bad one at 25. The destination is the same. You just took the road you needed to survive. And let me say this clearly, as someone who's watched markets and people for a very long time, your experience gives you an advantage you probably don't realize. You've lived through recessions, inflation cycles, housing bubbles, technological shifts, job changes, raising families, burying loved ones, building from scratch and rebuilding again. You've already proven your resilience. Now we're going to pair that resilience with wisdom. Not complicated formulas or charts, but simple, practical truths that make life easier, not harder. So take a breath, sit back. This isn't a lecture. This is a conversation between someone who's seen the world change 100 times and someone who's still standing. You've earned the right to understand your money without fear. You've earned the right to retire without guilt. And you've earned the right to hear advice that respects your intelligence instead of talking down to you. By the time we're done here, I want you to walk away feeling lighter, clearer, and more in control than you've felt in years. Because retirement isn't the end of anything. It's the first time in your life you get to live on your terms. Now let's talk about how to make sure the next chapter becomes the calmest, wisest, and most financially stable one yet. One of the great secrets of aging is this. As people get older, they fear running out of money more than they fear running out of time. It's not something folks admit, but I've seen it play out my entire life. When you're 30, you fear missing opportunities. When you're 60, you fear becoming a burden. You fear that one unexpected bill, one market downturn, one medical surprise will undo decades of work. But let me give you a truth. Most retirees never hear. You don't run out of money because of returns. You run out because of decisions. Bad decisions don't usually come from ignorance. They come from panic. People destroy their retirement the moment they start believing they have to outsmart the market to survive the rest of their life. They switch strategies, chase hotter returns, fall for miracle investments, or start trading like teenagers. I've watched people retire with $800,000 and live peacefully to 95 because they stayed rational. And I've watched people with 2 or 3 million lose control of everything because they tried to be clever when they should have been calm. You see, when you stop working, the temptation to meddle grows stronger. You're home more. You watch the news more. You follow markets more than you ever did. You begin thinking knowledge equals advantage. But information isn't the same as wisdom. In fact, too much information can drown the wisdom you already had. The biggest mistake retirees make is thinking the rules suddenly change just because they have more time on their hands. They want to optimize, tweak, adjust, improve. They want to squeeze out a little more return. They want to be smart. That's how people lose money. I'll tell you what I tell my own family. Retirement isn't the time to get fancy. It's the time to get consistent. Don't switch strategies. Don't chase yield. Don't touch leverage. Don't bet your future on predictions. Retirement is a season where the goal shifts. You're no longer trying to get rich. You're trying to stay stable. People always ask me for the perfect allocation. There is no perfect allocation. There's only this: an approach simple enough that you can stick with it through fear, boredom, and headlines. Because those three things, fear, boredom, and headlines, are what ruin most retirements. Here's something no financial advisor tells you. The market is not your biggest risk after retirement. Your reactions are. If you panic every time stocks drop, if you sell because your emotions flare up, if you FOMO into something just because your neighbor did, your retirement ends up becoming a psychological minefield instead of a peaceful chapter of life. Your job after 60 isn't to outsmart the future. It's to avoid sabotaging it. Don't compete with people who have more time to recover than you. Don't compare your investments to people who still have decades of income ahead of them. Their risks are not your risks. The older you get, the more your greatest financial asset becomes something most people ignore: self-control. In retirement, your nest egg doesn't protect you. Your discipline protects your nest egg. And if you can master that, the restraint, the patience, the calm, you won't just make your money last. You'll make your life feel lighter than it ever did while you were working. You know, people spend their entire working lives worried about the stock market, but when they reach retirement, they finally discover the real danger was in the mirror the whole time. It isn't inflation that destroys most retirements. It isn't taxes. It isn't even a bad year in the S&P. It's behavior. Simple, everyday human behavior. I've watched perfectly intelligent people work 40 years, save diligently, retire comfortably, and then lose half their savings in 5 years because they couldn't control two things: fear and pride. Fear makes you sell at the bottom. Pride makes you spend at the top. Put the two together, and you have a recipe that has ruined more retirements than any recession in history. Most people don't understand how emotional they become once they stop receiving a paycheck. When the paycheck ends, panic begins. You check the market 3 times a day. Every red candle feels like a personal attack. You start convincing yourself that you need to take action, not because the math changed, but because your nerves did. The hardest lesson to teach retirees is this: doing nothing is often the smartest financial decision you can make. But people hate doing nothing. They equate stillness with danger, when in reality, stillness is often what protects your money. Then there's the other silent killer: lifestyle creep. The moment people retire, they suddenly want to reward themselves. They upgrade their car, redo their kitchen, travel more than they ever did in their life, and then act surprised when the money starts running thin. Most people don't run out of money because they invested poorly. They run out because they lived expensively. Let me tell you something I've learned after knowing thousands of wealthy people. Your lifestyle is the most aggressive bill you'll ever pay. It rises quietly and refuses to go back down without a fight. The middle class dreams of security but buys luxury instead. The wealthy dream of freedom but chain themselves to appearances. And retirees, well, they think retirement means the brakes come off. In reality, retirement is when you need discipline more than ever. The biggest mistake older people make is thinking they've earned a certain lifestyle. I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy your life. I'm saying enjoyment without judgment turns into erosion. People confuse comfort with consumption. Comfort is waking up without worry. Consumption is buying things that create new worries. I've lived in the same house for over half a century. Not because I couldn't afford a nicer one, but because peace of mind compounds faster than marble floors. It's boring, it's simple, and it works. Your retirement doesn't need excitement, it needs endurance. If you can control your emotions in your lifestyle, the market won't scare you, recessions won't break you, and retirement won't overwhelm you. But if you let fear steer your decisions and let pride steer your spending, it won't matter how much you saved, you'll feel poor anyway. The truth is this: retirement isn't a financial challenge, it's a behavioral one. And if you master your behavior, the math takes care of itself. One of the hardest truths to accept in retirement is that the things you thought mattered don't, and the things you ignored are suddenly the only things that count. People believe retirement is about money, but once they finally enter it, they discover it's really about clarity. Let me tell you something I've learned after decades of watching people at every stage of life. The older you get, the more expensive complexity becomes. A complicated life drains you. Complicated finances worry you. Complicated possessions own you. And complicated expectations ruin the very peace you spent years trying to earn. People think simplifying their life is a step backwards, as if letting go makes them smaller. But simplicity doesn't shrink your life. It sharpens it. It gives you back the energy you once wasted on things that never mattered in the first place. When I was young, I used to think sophistication meant having a lot. As I grew older, I realized sophistication means needing less. You can't enjoy retirement if your mind is cluttered with obligations you created yourself, too many bills, too many toys, too many decisions, too many worries. Most retirees don't suffer from a lack of wealth. They suffer from a lack of simplicity. They built a life they can't maintain, then wonder why it feels heavy. Here's a lesson I learned long before I made any real money. The happiest people aren't the ones who keep upgrading. They're the ones who stop needing to. A simpler home feels safer. A simpler budget feels sturdier. A simpler routine feels freer. People resist this idea because they spent their whole life thinking progress means adding more. Retirement teaches the opposite. Real progress often comes from subtraction. Let me shift to the second part, time. The greatest trick life plays on us is making us believe time is abundant when we're young and scarce when we're older. By the time most people reach retirement, they realize the truth. Time was always the currency. Money was just the tool. You can earn money back, you can't earn time back. That makes time the most expensive thing you'll ever spend. But because people don't understand this, they end up trading their last valuable years for stress, distraction, and unnecessary complication. They protect their savings more than their hours, their schedule more than their peace, their possessions more than their relationships. The irony is that as your time becomes more precious, the world encourages you to waste it. Whole industries are built around distracting retirees, endless news cycles, fear-driven commentary, flashy investments, expensive hobbies, and social pressure dressed up as enjoyment. Retirement isn't about squeezing value out of every minute. It's about removing the things that steal value from your minutes. A walk with someone you love is richer than a cruise you can't afford. A quiet morning with coffee is more valuable than a flashy purchase that impresses no one. A healthy routine adds more years to your life than any luxury item subtracts from it. Here's something I say often. You don't get wealthy by collecting things. You get wealthy by collecting time. And in retirement, time is the one thing you finally own if you're wise enough not to give it away. The older I get, the more I realize the goal of life wasn't accumulation. It was clarity. And the goal of retirement isn't luxury, it's peace. If you can simplify your life and protect your time, your retirement becomes something money can't buy, a life that feels worth living every single day. The older I get, the more I've seen a painful pattern repeat itself. People spend decades climbing a ladder only to reach the top and realize the ladder was leaning against the wrong building. That's the quiet regret of retirement. Not that time moved quickly, but that priorities were misplaced. When you're young, you chase income. In your 40s, you chase comfort. By your 50s, you chase status. And when you finally retire, you start chasing meaning, something most people never practiced. I've watched executives, doctors, engineers, business owners, smart people, successful people reach their 60s and feel like strangers in their own life. They're wealthy but uneasy, accomplished but directionless. They realize that the things they worked for weren't the things that make the final chapter fulfilling. Let me tell you why this happens. Most people spent their life managing money, but never learned how to manage themselves. You can save diligently, invest wisely, even retire with a substantial nest egg and still feel lost. Money can buy you options, but it can't buy you purpose. It can make you comfortable, but it can't make you clear. It can give you security, but it can't give you peace. Peace comes from something far less glamorous, your habits. If you lived your whole life rushing, you won't magically slow down after 65. If you live chasing more, you won't suddenly feel satisfied. If you lived comparing yourself to others, you won't stop when the paycheck ends. Retirement doesn't cure your tendencies, it exposes them. It's the first time in your adult life where you can't blame work for your unhappiness. The distractions go away, the noise fades, and what's left is the person you've been building, intentionally or accidentally. That's why regret is so common. Not because people failed, but because they never decided what truly mattered until the race was already over. But here's the good news. Financial peace has very little to do with wealth and everything to do with alignment. When your habits match your values, your life finally settles. Peace comes from routines that you actually enjoy living inside. It comes from having fewer obligations, not more achievements, from having clarity, not complexity, from having enough, not excess. Most people think peace appears once they hit a certain number. But the people I've seen retire the happiest weren't the ones with the most money. They were the ones with the cleanest priorities. A man who wakes up without dread is richer than a man with 3 houses. A woman who knows exactly what she needs is wealthier than someone who keeps expanding their lifestyle. A retiree who enjoys simple days has a luxury that money can't purchase. Financial peace isn't the reward of a big account balance. It's the reward of a stable mind, a steady routine, and a lifestyle small enough to maintain and large enough to enjoy. The older I get, the more I believe this. Retirement isn't the end of the road, it's the beginning of seeing the road clearly. All the noise finally quiets down. All the pretending disappears. All the comparisons fade into the background. You discover that the things you thought made you successful were just decorations, and the things that make you peaceful were within reach the entire time. If you want a fulfilling retirement, don't focus on how much you have. Focus on who you become when you finally stop running. There's a strange habit I've noticed in people as they get older. No matter how much they've saved, no matter how secure they seem, they still convince themselves they need just a little more cushion, a little more comfort, a little more safety. And that little more becomes the silent poison that ruins what could have been the calmest chapter of their life. Let me tell you something gently, but honestly. If you can't feel secure with what you already have, more money will not fix that. I've seen people with modest pensions who sleep peacefully every night. And I've seen multimillionaires who check their accounts 3 times a day because they're terrified of losing what they barely enjoy. The danger in retirement isn't running out of money, it's running out of peace. Peace disappears the moment you decide your life is measured by what you accumulate instead of what you experience. The pursuit of more never ends. That's the trap. You chase more income, more returns, more upgrades, more distractions. You tell yourself it's preparation when really it's fear dressed up as productivity. The moment your fear begins managing your money, retirement stops feeling like freedom and starts feeling like punishment. Older people don't fall for get-rich-quick schemes. They fall for get-secure-quick illusions. They chase anything that promises certainty, even if it's reckless. They treat the future like an enemy instead of a chapter they can shape calmly. But here's the truth most retirees never hear. Your retirement won't be defined by the money you accumulate, but by the chaos you avoid. You don't need higher returns, you need fewer emergencies. You don't need the perfect portfolio, you need a stable routine. You don't need more income streams, you need fewer leaks in your lifestyle. Peace of mind is not purchased, it's protected. I've spent my entire career preaching something most people ignore until it's too late. You don't become financially free by adding more. You become free by needing less. Less stress, less comparison, less noise, less panic, disguised as strategy. If you build a retirement that depends on big outcomes, you'll always feel one step away from disaster. But if you build a retirement around simple habits, living below your means, staying patient, avoiding unnecessary risk, then you don't need luck, timing, or miracles. You just need time. Time is the real wealth at this stage. Not the years you live, but the years you still get to live well. Not how long you work, but how calmly you can live now that the working has ended. So here's my final warning, the one I wish everyone heard before their last day on the job. If you enter retirement still chasing the same things that exhausted you in your working years, you will rob yourself of the only reward retirement offers, peace. Stop chasing, stop upgrading, stop measuring yourself by numbers on a screen. Start valuing the mornings you wake without urgency, the evenings without deadlines, and the days that belong entirely to you. A successful retirement isn't built on wealth, it's built on wisdom. And wisdom is simply this, knowing when you finally have enough. Once you accept that, your money will last longer, your mind will feel lighter, and your life for the first time in decades will feel fully your own. Before I finish, I want to tell you something most people your age never hear, and it matters more than any financial advice I could give. You did better than you think. Life has a way of magnifying the mistakes and shrinking the victories. You remember the moments you stumbled, the times you worried, the decisions you regret, but you forget the thousands of quiet wins, the bills you paid, the storms you survived, the responsibilities you carried when nobody else could. Most people reach their later years believing they fell short, but that's not true. You endured, you provided, you showed up when it was hard. That counts for far more than you realize. Let me reassure you of something. Retirement isn't a judgment, it's a transition. It's not about what you failed to do, it's about what you finally get to do. You don't have to race anyone anymore. You don't have to prove anything anymore. You don't have to compare your path to someone else's highlight reel. You've already won the hardest battles of life. You made it here. You kept going. You built a life others depended on. You survived decades of change, uncertainty, and responsibility. Give yourself credit for that. And remember, it's never too late to build a life that feels lighter, calmer, and clearer. A meaningful retirement doesn't require perfect finances. It requires perspective. You don't need to have millions to have peace. You just need wisdom, routine, and the willingness to slow down long enough to enjoy the things you worked so hard to create. If nobody has told you this recently, let me be the one to say it. You've earned your rest, you've earned your peace, and you're not behind, you're right on time. And if you're worried about the future or confused about the next step or unsure about the decisions you need to make, that's okay. You're not alone. I'll keep showing up here, sharing what I've learned, helping you navigate the chapters ahead. So stay tuned, not for the markets, but for the clarity that helps you live the years ahead with confidence and calm. Because the truth is simple. Your best days don't have to be behind you. Your wisest days can start right now.